Hey lovelies, the following video does include spoilers, so make sure to read the title of this video. If you haven't read those chapters, please press pause, read up, and I will be waiting for you when you get back. We did it, and that ending is going to make me have to check myself into a hospital. Hey guys, welcome back to Lore Book Club. I am your host, Cassidy, and this week we finished Heat of the Everflame by Penn Cole. And oh my god, like what just happened? Because the last page I was like, and now we have to wait? Spooky. So let's get into it. We left off at the end of the battle with Diem's daddy, Orificai. Hate his name. I think I'm gonna call him Orphe. Can we do that from now on? Orphe. Doriel, of course, is very thankful for Diem's help during the battle, and she's like, he's not gonna be so grateful when she realizes that I didn't kill Vance and I sent the rebels away using Umbros magic, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And she does no longer believe that Sophos just kills the mortals. She's like, getting a little soft spot for Doriel, and I'm like, watch your back, girl. Doriel lets Diem know that they are going to summon the rest of the crowns to the island of Kareel to complete Diem's coronation, and they will vote in her favor on one condition. And Doriel asks, when I send the messenger hawks to Montios and Fortos, is anybody going to answer? And Diem's like, no. And then they're like, but when we get to the island, is the votes going to be there for those realms? And she's like, yes. And Doriel's gagged. Doriel says, but why? The kindred created the 9 crowns for this very reason, to keep any one person from becoming too powerful. And then Diem and Luther both read Doriel to filth, and they say, I know you've got every word of scripture memorized, Doriel. Tell me, did the blessed kindred command the crowns to exile the mortals or protect them? Doriel opened their mouth to speak, and Luther growled to cut them off. My queen wishes to unite. The rest of you only divide. Perhaps the kindred have had enough of your hearsay. Crazy. Also, I understand the frustration, the anger, everything, but like, we're dancing on a fine line of getting Miss Queen Diem coronated, and I feel like Doriel is not the one that we want to be pissing off in this moment. The ritual is going to be held in 2 days, and it's Diem's responsibility to send word to her mother, Aurelie, to let the Guardians know that they have to give the crowns access to the island. And Diem's like, yeah, no problem. But in her head, she's like, that is not going to happen. We're just going to have to hope that they let us on. She then asks Doriel about the Lost Realm, and they're like, what are you talking about? And Diem's like, my Umbros magic is on fire. I know you're lying. And we learn that this is confidential. Not even the other crowns know about this. This is like Sophos's biggest secret. And the 10th kindred is revealed. I knew it. I knew it. His name was Omnos, and he was completely erased from history. And it is said, the youngest, a brother, he had a crown and a realm of his own in between Sophos and Montios, but he died a few years after the original forging. The remaining 9 kindred recast the spell and allocated that land to Montios. The Forgotten Lands. They also tried to kill his Gryvern, but the Gryvern escaped and went into hiding, and nobody's seen this Gryvern since. Well, we've seen him now, and he's angry. But when Diem hears the name Omnos, it is like a lightning bolt through her godhood. This name is like spiritually ingrained into who she is, and that's because she's a descendant of that realm, without a doubt. Doriel then goes on to say, that must be why traces of the 10th realm remained in the forging magic. If Ophiuce was hiding with Omnos' crown, the recasting of the forging spell would not have been completely successful, and that would explain why you're both so powerful, since there are only 2 of you. They paused. 2 that we know of. 2 that we know of? I need book 4 to be written. We also learned that Omnos never took a mortal mate, which meant that he didn't forfeit his immortality, so he would have lived forever. And it's kind of assumed that the kindred feared that and that they murdered their brother. Spooky. He obviously was extremely powerful, and then they locked his offspring into a cellar. Right, because that was the smart thing to do. But we also learned that Umbros and Montios were alive during the Blood War, which is when Ophiuce was put into the cellar, so they knew him. Which now makes sense, because Umbros is like, I can tell you all about your life and your history and everything because she was there. Actually, madness. I love Umbros. Y'all know that. Don't. After Diem learns this, She has a thought to herself and she thinks, just like the half-mortal children in Lumnos, Ophiuce had been condemned to death for the sole crime of his blood. So this is where things are going to get tricky for Diem in future books, because really he's angry about the thing that she's trying to fight against. I think things are going to get messy. And when she thinks about this name Omnos, it like connects to that empty barrel, no humanity side of her, which makes me scared. But I'm also curious if he's going to be like, he was just murdered by the kindred and they're like, fear my younger brother. But in reality, it was the kindred that needed to be feared. And he was actually a good guy. Maybe. They want the sword back in the archives. And Diem thinks, though I could feel in the deepest parts of my soul that I was meant to wield this sword, I couldn't risk angering Doriel before my coronation. Right. I'd have to find my way back to the sword another day. I can't wait to figure out how that happens, because the one thing about Miss Diem, after the ending of this book, she's going to be angry. Are we going to enter Diem's villain era? Because I can't wait. But to be honest, when she was being like, oh, I'll just get it another day, I'm like, why not just explain your vision that you were there on the battlefield to Doriel? But then I guess Doriel's a little snake. So maybe she didn't trust him? I don't know. In Sophos, there is a tent full of descended that were touched by Godstone, stabbed, sliced, and they're all going to die from their wounds. But because Diem had cured 2 people before, she goes to help and they're all making fun of her, kind of being like, we've tried this poultice before and like blah, 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 blah. So she secretly adds a drop of blood, because when she goes to her memory of when she helped Taryn, a little bit of blood had fallen into the poultice. Unsanitary. Why didn't she start anew? But alas, Taryn's here and well. Doriel invites them for a private dinner, but Diem's like, no, I want to... Luther and Diem are walking back to kind of like Teller's apartment, and Sophos seems like a really cool place. It's kind of insane how modern it is, and this is like one of my favorite things about the fantasy world of Amarion, is how each different realm is so drastically different, and it's not like they're all old school. Like Sophos almost feels like it could be today, which is just so fascinating, that then you go to Montios and there's just like snow caves and prayer. It's insane. They get back to Teller's apartment and Teller's like, I'm not leaving. I love being here. You can't change my mind. And Diem's like, what about Lily? You love her. And he's like, yeah, well, this is how it is now, blah, 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 blah. And Luther pipes up and he goes, when you truly love someone, you hold on and you never let go, no matter what stands in your way. If your brother isn't willing to fight to hell and back to be with my sister, then he's right. He doesn't deserve her. Critical read. Crazy. Teller's like kind of gagged at that, but it makes him think, which I'm glad he does. But then Luther starts like making out with Diem and like macking. They are mackety macking. And Teller's like, don't destroy my room. And I was like, Diem's like, stop being so hard on him. And Luther says, I think he needs to see exactly what it looks like when a man loves a woman unconditionally and won't be torn away from her by any force in life or in death. That's my man, Mr. Corbois. Diem is still pissed at Luther for going AWOL in the battle, even though he was going to deliver you Vance, but anyway, he should have just killed him, whatever. And he's like, come here. So he's like, use your magic. I want to show you what I saw. And Diem goes into Luther's memory of the battle. And this man's devotion to Diem Bellator is something out of a storybook, and I love it. I also loved that we got a POV of him, like to hear what his kind of voice was like, but like he's a lover boy. He is so obsessed with Diem, it's mad. And during this POV, Luther says, I'd never met any other descendant whose power could match mine, but with her, it wasn't even close. If my magic was a spark, hers was the god's damn sun. Oh, I love that. I love it so much. And then when Diem stabbed the Gryvern and she had her carry moment, was covered in blood, Luther, instead of being like, that's crazy, goes, she looked stunning, lethal, unconquerable, a goddess of war, darkness eternal, and the brightest light. She looked like a queen, my queen. Also, Luther gets a immediately when she's like covered head to toe in Gryvern blood, and I was like, that boy's a freak. But Luther sees Vance, so he's following him, and Vance was on his way to kill literal babies. And after seeing this point of view, where the mortal teacher went God mode, love her, I just was relit on fire about how angry I am that Diem made the decision to let him go. That should have never happened. And Luther, because he's using his brain, says, I would have preferred to kill him, ideally in a slow, exceedingly painful way, but my queen wouldn't want that. I already knew she would set him free. There was no heart so dark that she didn't believe she could bring it back into the light. Meh. He wanted to kill babies. For book 4, I genuinely need Diem to enter her villain era. Tell me I'm not alone on that. Diem comes out of his like vision and she's terrified because she can feel like viscerally how much this man loves her. And she says to him, "I'm so sick of being scared, Luther. Sometimes it feels like the kindred are taking the one thing that brings me joy and dangling it over a cliff, waiting to see how many times they can pretend to drop you before I throw myself over just to make it stop." Purr. Love that. But Luther's like, "You're a warrior, you're amazing, let me show you yourself." And he takes her in front of the mirror. She's like skinny because she's been on the road and there's been like no food, but she's like a hardened woman. And when she looks at herself, she says, "The last time I closely studied my full reflection had been the morning before the challenging. That girl had been terrified and small. She'd put on a brave face, but she'd felt unworthy of the crown on her head and incapable of fulfilling the destiny that came with it. But the woman staring back at me now, she'd seen things. She made enemies and allies, survived battles and bloodshed and near certain death. She'd learned to wield both her magic and her crowns. She'd confronted kings and queens and bargained with the gods. She'd fallen in love, hopelessly, madly in love, and she stopped denying who and what she was. Perhaps nothing had done more to strengthen her than that. This woman was a survivor. She could fight, she could endure, and she could win a war." When this war happens, I fear I'm going to crash out. They're finally alone and they're both covered in grime and dirt and blood from the battle. So Luther's like, "Let's go have a bath." And I was like, "Oh, it's happening. It's time." They get into this like 10 out of 10 bath. I was reading that like, I need a bath in a Sophos bathtub because that sounds amazing. And things are getting hot and heavy. They're like putting on a show for each other. She's in the bath and she thinks, "For a long time after discovering I was descended, I'd felt like a stranger inhabiting someone else's skin. It had felt as if overnight my flesh was stronger, my bones harder, my blood magic infused. Yet it hadn't felt like mine. I'd wanted to shed it all, to let the descended slough off and reveal the breakable, unremarkable mortal I was certain lay underneath. That began to change at the challenging. I'd had to accept myself as a queen and a descended, to take control of my magic. Ever since, the more I learned about who I was and what I could do, the more I felt at home in my own skin. My body felt less like a costume and more like a weapon, one I could wield to accomplish whatever I wanted. And right now, its targets were set on Luther Corbois." I am so proud of her. When we think back to Little Miss Girly on Paradise Row, to Little Miss Three Crowns, I'm so proud of her. So he gets into the bath and he's like washing her hair. And don't get me wrong, one of my favorite mini tropes, a good hair wash. Somebody washing somebody else's hair is so unbelievably beautifully intimate and I love it. But I have been waiting 3 books and we were so close. We were so close, y'all. And then we did not get there. So he's like, "Time for our date. We're going for dinner." And I was like, They're wandering through the city and they run into Stuart, who, I love him. He is not afraid to shoot his shot with Miss Diem Bellator, regardless of Luther Corbois and his like towering territorial energy 5 inches behind her. But they're headed to the library for a surprise. Now, when they get there, he's like, "Do you trust me?" She's like, "Yes." And he puts shadows around her head so that she can't see. Little shadow magic blindfold. But she walks in and she knows that the library is always open so people can always learn. Cool. But she's like assuming that there's people there. And Luther like spanks her and she's like, "Oh my God, do we have an audience?" And I was like, "Diem, you crazy freak." But he reveals where they are and nobody's in there. Doriel has given them access for 1 whole night and she can read as many books as she wants. They continue forward and there is a bronze statue with leaves that look like they're on fire and they're made out of like jewels. And it is the Everflame. And Luther is like, "Ooh, look, the old gods." And Diem's like, "Isn't that a little blasphemous from you, Mr. Corbois?" And he's like, "If we want to coexist, why can't the kindred and the old gods?" And I was like, "Per Luther, you're learning." But she touches the tree and it like burns red, lights on fire, not actually, but it's like glowing with magic. And her godhood speaks to her and says, "Restore the balance, daughter of the forgotten." They're both gagged. They're like, "What was that?" But of course they don't try and figure that out. They just go into the door and go into the room, and they are all the mortal books that were banned. Oh, talk about a dream date for Miss Diem Bellator. There's like a little bit of food, some wine, pillows, books, a tea that'll keep her up all night. Okay, drugging her. But it's going to be an amazing date. And she's like, "Oh, I'm in love, love. Like, this is love. And she says to him, your fealty means the world to me, Luther, but it is not the reason I love you any more than my crown is the reason you love me. I want more than just the prince, and I want us to be more than our titles, even if only when we're alone. And they start getting a little hot and heavy again. And he's like, how do you like it? She's like, I want to burn. And they bang. We did it, folks. We did it. We did it, Joe. After 3 books, Diem Bellator and Luther Corbois finally had sex. Round of applause. Luther says, let all those who might try to tear us apart see this and know how far my devotion will go. I will suffer for you, bleed for you, but most of all, I will survive for you. My body can be carved in two, open and dying, and still I will crawl from the ruins of my flesh and fight my way back to your side. Death itself could not keep me away. Right. And then he goes on to say, Diem Bellator, you are everything I've ever wanted. You are my joy and my salvation. You are perfect. And I promise you this, I will love you for as long as love exists. I gotta take 6 to 7 business days because that is a 10 out of 10 thing to say to a woman. They complete their journey. And she releases all her magic. And tell me I'm not the only one that was like, the books! I thought she was gonna burn them all. I was like, please don't hurt the mortal books. I was stressing. But she reads all night and it is a perfect 10 out of 10 evening. And they have sex like 15 more times, which good for them. As they should. We learn that Doriel gave them another day in the library and my hackles are risen. Because why? Not liking this. That was the first moment I was like, something is not good. The assistants come to pick Diem up to go to the coronation and they're like, Luther, you have to stay here. And he's like, get fucked. I'm coming with you. And they are like, okay, he can at least come to the dock. They get there, Doriel's pissed. And Luther and Diem are talking on their way to the boat. She lets him know that she's thinking about having a council like Montios and Lumnos. And he's like, that's a cool idea. But she wants to have mortals on the council as well. And she also lets him know that she doesn't want to kill her dad. To which Luther says, hope doesn't make you a traitor, but I do think there are some people who can't be redeemed. Vance. But Diem's like, maybe we can build a house together and have a family. And Luther is a zombie. He's like, she gets on the boat. Doriel's acting bizarre. And I'm like, this is not going to end well. Already can feel it. I've read 96% of the book and we're going to the island. And I was like, some shit is about to go down. But Doriel mentions the blood bargain. And I was like, damn, baby, stop making blood bargain. You're a queen, my girl. You're a queen. He says, okay, I'll give you my vote, but if you don't kill your father, your magic is forfeit. And she's like, sure. The fine print. What is up with these people not reading the fine print? I would need a lawyer to do a blood bargain. He pulls out this blade, and it's the same blade that was in Andre Bellator's body when he died. And she's like, but he wasn't on the island. So she's like, where'd you get this knife? And she kind of is like, maybe House Bennett. And she's like, I could say something, but I'm not going to. But I don't really understand why House Bennett would kill her dad. I think it has to be deeper than that. He holds out his hand and he's like, do we have a deal? And she's like, yeah, we have a deal. Blood bargain. Okay. But she doesn't want to kill her dad. But now she's made a blood bargain that if she doesn't kill him, she's going to lose all her magic. So now what? I'm pissed. But she remembers something Andre Bellator said, which was, war is death and misery and sacrifice. War is making choices that haunt you for the rest of your days. And Miss Diem, that is one of them. We get to the island of Kareel, and the Guardians did allow the crowns to have access to the island, so that was cool. And all the crowns are there except Umbros, but none of them know that she holds multiple crowns. She asks for a full pardon for her and her mother. They obviously are like, no. To which she says, everything has been taken from the mortals. Their land, their homes, their books, their wealth. Half of you exile them. Others crush them under high taxes and unfair laws. And the rest of you hide your eyes and convince yourself it's not your problem to solve. But it is. How can we call ourselves caretakers of this continent if we failed its native people? None of you, none of us, are without fault. None of us have done enough. She read them for filth. Now, Arboros is stressed since Umbros was attacked because she has a huge amount of guardians in her realm. And you can see that she is just not having it. She's not having a good time. But Doriel and Diem had made the decision not to tell everybody about the 10th realm. But they do let everybody know that Ophiuce has the same magic as Diem and that they can absorb magic. So nothing can hurt them. So without her, everyone will die. It comes to the vote. Arboros votes no, Phanos votes no, Igneos votes no. Meros and Sapphos both vote yes. Then you have Diem, Fortos, and Montios, those are all her, voted. But you need 6, and that's only 5. But we learn that Sophos had a bigger plan, played her for a fool. But my girl Ursula arrives. I love her. I love her. I love her. She is my favorite. She will always be my favorite. 10 out of 10 character. Love her to death. She's also so funny when she's like, have none of you imbeciles noticed her crown? So funny. And it is revealed that she holds all of their magic and they're all gagged. They're like, no, you're not supposed to be able to do that though. Then it's all revealed. Ursula's like, you shouldn't get my vote. So Sophos reveals their whole plan. Played your card a little early there, my friend. But if someone else kills Orpheus, but if someone else kills Diem's dad, Diem will lose her magic because she has to kill him in the bonded bargain. Insane. Ursula then very quickly announces that she knew about Omnos. Sophos is like, what? And Ursula says, the future is so much darker now, she said, if there is even still a future at all. Where victory was once certain, she sighed and shook her head. I share the blame for not telling you sooner. Blessed Father Umbros warned me that our fate hung in the balance of your choice. He urged me to trust you. Instead, I tried to force your hand. That decision cost me much. This decision will cost me everything. She then goes, take the Rosebane, use my key, heed my warnings, especially about my heir, and don't forget what you pledged to sacrifice to see your plans through. And then she says, I am giving you the thing I value most, Diem Bellator. Use it wisely. She says that she votes in Diem's favor, and Igneos stabs her in the back of the throat with Godstone. Okay, sure. Igneos, you're marked. Obviously, this is insane. Everybody's revealed to have weapons, which is not allowed. Lol. Igneos then looks at his arm, and Ursula had put her 2 fingernails, and there's black underneath her fingernails, which is Godstone. So she scratched him. So he's gonna die, because Diem's never gonna give him her blood. And just like that, Ursula dies, my fave gal, and Diem becomes the Queen of Umbros. Okay, so she has 4 crowns now. Also, heed my warning about my heir. But Diem's the heir. I think Diem's gonna go crazy. I think she's gonna lose her brain. Also, I feel like Rosebane is something on the island. Like that there's Flame Root, there's gonna be Rosebane. Take the Rosebane. I wish there was another book. Diem is like barreling over with laughter. They're all paranoid. She's like, y'all kindred, rancid, mother pieces of shit. Igneos is like, retake the vote, but he's also gonna die. And then Diem is gonna be the Queen of Igneos. Crazy. She's like, you know what? Screw y'all, I'm out of here. She goes to leave, and then she looks out and Teller's there. Sophos reveals that they're going to do magic on the Heartstone so that only crowns can be on the island of Kareel. Nobody else can step foot on it. If Diem doesn't agree, Teller will die. And everybody on the island will die if they don't get off the island by sunset, which is in like 10 minutes. Arbros like secretly lets Diem know that if she can tell the Guardians to go to Arbros, she'll let them in. She's a troubled soul, Miss Arbros. She's between a rock and a hard place. But what they do is tie Diem to the island so she can't leave. So the same thing that they did to her father, they do to her. I actually can't handle that. She's telling the Guardians to run. Everybody's like a little frazzled. Also, the Gryverns come in. That's crazy, but Gryverns normally aren't allowed there. But Sophos and Meros had their Gryverns come in and like kill some of the Guardians. I don't like those two. Those 2 little bullies in the corner of the realm. No thank you. And through all the chaos of everything, Luther, Perth, and Teller come running out to get her. Of course, Luther knew something was wrong. His spidey senses were tingling. She's screaming like, get out of here. And she thinks, a rift cracked through the center of my soul. It split me open with the same explosive destruction as my falling blood when it fractured the Heartstone. I no longer feared the cold, heartless monster Officier had become. I welcomed it. I would embrace it with hateful glee. I would devour the world whole for all that they had taken from me. I would become a thing of vengeance and spite. I would... Also, this is what Lumnos said. Destroyer of realms, something of vengeance. Remember? This was like one of the first prophecies about her, and this is what has become. I can't. I literally can't. Sori comes out of nowhere. Luther's like, I had a hunch. Sori goes to get her, but she's like screaming, no, go get them. She grabs Teller. Luther and Perth are running. Teller grabs Perth and can't grab Luther because his hand keeps slipping. And then Teller makes the decision to drop Perth. No, in order to grab Luther. Perth drops to the ground. I'm so sad. He runs. He looks up at Diem, salutes. The sun sets, and Perth dies. I lost 2 of my favorite characters in like 3 pages. Ursula and Perth. I'm so pissed. Teller is never going to recover from making that decision. I can't. Through all of this, Diem realizes that she wants Luther to be her mate. A little late. You're tied to an island, but okay. And as she's looking out, she sees Luther and Teller and Soiree circling the island. She's like, at least they're safe. And then a godstone blade goes through her body, through her heart. Can't handle that. And Igneos is there. Sophos does things their way, but I do things my own way. Because crowns can be on the island. So Igneos just... Diem's like, oh, I thought dying would feel worse than this. Like, for sure it hurts, but... And Igneos is like, you were a good opponent, but the flames always win in the end. And that is where we ended with Heat of the Everflame. Insane. The amount of excitement I feel for the next book is unnormal. So good. Now, our book boyfriend of the week, no doubt about it, goes to Luther Corbois. I think my man had this basically every week except 2. Zalaric had it 1 week. Oh, and Taryn another. Otherwise, we were Luther Corbois, baby. Oh, Diem was also at one time. Come on, Diem. But good job, Luther. You are ultimate book boyfriend. Our power scale this week starts off with Diem on the bottom because my girl is trapped on an island and got stabbed in the back with Godstone. So things are not looking very good for her. Then we have Orpheus because he's terrifying and he's going to wreak havoc in the next book, I fear. And they have no idea what they're up against. Then we have Doriel because they were a sneaky little something and they really did a number on Miss Diem. So good job, Doriel. Don't like you though. And finally, we have a tie between Igneos and Ursel. Now, Ursel I'm giving it to because she sacrificed her life because she would have been able to read Igneos' thoughts in order to pass her crown on to Diem. And I give it to Igneos because he outsmarted everybody and just killed her. Our spice meter this week is a 4 because they finally did the deed. And there were some hot scenes in these chapters. I was like pleasantly surprised. I feel like book 5 is going to be a bit more feral. Or it won't be. I'm not sure. It was pretty tame spice, but very tasteful, so I did enjoy it. And our tension, I'm going to put it at a 3. I think there was tension. I don't know, it just kind of gets to a point, and it got to a point where I'm happy they had sex when they did, because I feel like there was no tension anymore. It was just more getting annoying. Like, I was like, is it time? Our quote of the week goes to Igneos because he dropped a fire line, and he said, but the flames always win in the end. And I think that's a little bit of foreshadowing, because I think the Everflame will win in the end. Clocked it. Now, my predictions going into the next book, which is not yet released, and I don't think there's a release date, which maybe is making me panic, but anyway, I definitely think that Diem won't die because Aurelie stabbed Ophacius in the heart with Godstone, and Godstone can't kill her because she can cure Godstone, right? So it definitely won't kill her like Igneos thinks it will. But Igneos will die. This is just an idea. Maybe like one of her crowns will die. And because Luminos was her first one, it will pass on to Luther. Thoughts and prayers. And I don't know what's going to happen with the Guardians. I think Vance is going to go crazy. I think we're going to have a battle. I think there's going to be a war. I think they're going to end up needing Diem. And she is going to be on that island for too long. And she is going to enter her villain era. And finally, because these people have been acting a fool, and it's time for Diem to be a bad bitch. Now it is time for everybody's favorite part of the week. Would I survive these chapters? Chapter 69, yes, I would survive a chat with Doriel and learning officially about the 10th Kindred. Chapter 70, yes, I would survive mind-to-mind movie time with Luther Corbois. Chapter 71, yes, I would survive getting my hair washed by Luther. Chapter 72, yes, I would survive date night at the library and finally having sex with Luther Corbois. Finally. Chapter 73, yes, I would survive a blood bargain with Doriel, but why? Oh. Chapter 74, yes, I would survive a stressful meeting with the Crowns and becoming the Queen of Umbros. And chapter 75, no, I would not survive getting stabbed in the heart with Godstone. I would not survive that. I love these books so much. It has been one of my favorite reads of the year. I hope you guys have loved it as much as I have. I love the characters. I love the plot. I love the realms. I love everything about it. I'm definitely giving the series so far a 5-star. I'm eating it up and I cannot wait to see what happens next, even though we have to wait a little while. For next week, we are going to be starting Brimstone. I know Quicksilver was not my favorite read of last year, but we are going to go ahead with Brimstone. I have heard amazing things about it. I am so excited and I hope you guys are too. So please read chapters 1 to 10 and I can't wait for the next book club. Make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Hit that bell so you never miss a video. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Lore Book Club, where I post funny little videos every single day. I'm so excited to start Brimstone, and I just can't wait to keep going. Happy reading. Mwah. Bye, guys.